Have you ever suggested something to a Brit? It could be an idea that you have, it could be a plan that you have, and you have been met with the reply, hmm, let me think about it. And that reply is delivered in all sorts of different tones, which in fact mean all sorts of different things. But you've walked away from the conversation and you've thought to yourself, brilliant, they're thinking about it. There may be a positive outcome from this conversation. I may, in fact, get what I want. But in actual fact, inside the British mind is the thought, brilliant, I managed not to say no, and I've got myself out of this particular situation, and I don't need to worry about it. It's been shelved for the time being. Let's bother about that at some point in the future. Welcome to the wonderful world of British diplomatic phrases. And this particular phrase is an incredibly common one here in the UK. And in this video, I want to try to look at why this expression is so powerful, why it sounds polite, why it often means the opposite to what you think it means, and why your own cultural upbringing and background influences your unique understanding of this expression as well. I'm Frank, and I have spent the last 15 years teaching English to Asian students. And I am on a personal mission to try to decode some of these expressions and what they actually really mean. Many years ago, maybe 25 years ago, when I was studying here myself in the UK, and I was studying with many students from Asia, and they had a very good command of the English language. But the problem was that they used to take everything that a British person said at face value. So they would take their meaning to be absolutely literal. And as many people know, a lot of what British people say is not, in fact, literal at all. It is wrapped up in all sorts of other meaning, which can be incredibly confusing for non-native speakers, and in fact, native speakers from other countries as well, such as from America. And these particular students that I used to study with used to get incredibly frustrated. After some months, they would actually turn around to me and say, why is it, Frank, that you British guys just cannot say what you really mean? Everything you talk about just appears to be so insincere. I don't really know whether I'm coming or going, whether you're talking the truth, whether you actually mean what you say or not. I am totally confused by it. If we look at this expression at its more literal level, then it really does appear to sound quite reasonable, quite considerate, and you even feel a hint of enthusiasm, which is wrapped up in this expression as well. But in actual fact, in British English, it is a type of polite safety blanket in which British people are really saying, I don't want to commit. And it does that without breaking the polite ecosystem in which we all live in here in the UK. So, yes, it means I'm thinking about it. But in actual fact, it really means a soft not really. So, why does this expression actually exist? Well, the one fundamental thing that we have to understand about British culture is that us Brits value politeness over precision every single time. And whilst it's great to be clear, certainly not at the expense of awkwardness. So, such expressions like no thanks, absolutely not, and I am not interested are awkward. They are far too direct. And we would always try to seek out kinder, gentler, more vague types of expression to avoid that directness which results in awkwardness. In fact, what we're really trying to do is maintain the social harmony so there is no disappointment, there is no embarrassment, and there is absolutely no conflict. I'll have a think about it basically creates this cloud of uncertainty in which we are all within our own comfort zones. No lines have been crossed, there has been no conflict at all, and thank goodness there's been absolutely no awkwardness at all. We can both go our own separate ways after the conversation, and we're both feeling relatively relaxed. And we have maintained social harmony. So that's exactly what British English is all about, maintaining that sense of social harmony. But one thing which is incredibly important to take note of is the tone, the manner in which it is expressed. So, if, for example, it is expressed in an upbeat manner with a positive type of body language, so maybe someone's leaning forward and they may say something like, I'll certainly get back to you on that one, you can actually sense in their voice that they may, in fact, be telling the truth. They may, in fact, be coming back to you later with some positive news. And it's very, very important to try and listen to the tone and try to work out in your own mind. Um, can you sense a degree of positivity there at all? Were they smiling? Were they leaning into you? Second way in which that might be expressed would be a more neutral type of a tone. So, and this for me would be more of a classic no. I'll have a think about it. So it's almost like a deadpan, monotone type of an expression. I'll have a think about it. You can almost tell in my voice that I'm not being serious, and in fact, I'm unlikely to have a think about it at all. And what I really mean is no. And probably the worst way in which it can be expressed is when somebody, in fact, they don't say it in a monotone way, they slow down their speech deliberately. And it's said in a very thoughtful way. So they may say, for example, something along the lines of, I'll have a think about it. I'll have a think about it. And they may even nod a little bit like that, and they may look incredibly thoughtful. And if they slow down their speech and if they appear to be incredibly thoughtful, then this usually means absolutely not. And please never, ever ask me such a request again. So let's have a look at some examples in which I'll have a think about it, in fact, means no. So you're in a work environment, you say to your work colleague, would you like to go out for a drink later on tonight? And your British colleague says to you, ooh, I'll have a think about it. Meaning, no, I've got other things to be doing. Again, you're in the work environment and you say to your British colleague, would you like to join this additional project? And they say in response to you, um, let me think about it. And you can tell there the voice has been slowed down, which is emphasizing even more the fact that the colleague is not wanting to get involved at all. How about in a more sort of salesy type environment whereby you are a salesman and you're speaking to a British person? Would you like to sign up today? I'll have a think about it. And you can tell from the rather reserved, retracting type response that the British person is not comfortable at all. And if you can ever detect any form of discomfort in the voice or in the body language of the British person that you're talking to, that almost certainly means no, or it almost certainly means the response is negative. I think one of the main problems with this expression is depending very much on your own cultural background. So if you come from a more direct background, for example, in Asia, maybe my experience is in Hong Kong, so countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, other Asian countries, which are very direct in terms of their communication, it can be very frustrating because you are used to this very direct form of communication in which you will get a yes or a no. Very rarely will you get a maybe. So, how do we go about dealing with this expression? I'll have a think about it. Well, for me, there's two different ways in which you can deal with it. One is just to accept it for how it is. A no. So we're not going to press them. We're not going to follow up and send 14 emails to keep pushing to try to get to a yes. We're just going to accept it for what it is. But that I would only recommend if you really did strongly feel that it was a no. And more often than not, this expression causes quite a large degree of confusion. And if for me, if I was confused, and as a native speaker, I often get confused when people say this expression to me. I may say something along the lines of, no worries at all. Should I assume that now is not the right time? And that gives them the option to either come back and say, well, yes, can we revisit this at a later date? Or they may, in fact, just say, no, no, I do genuinely just need a little bit of extra time to consider the options. When you seek clarification in a non pressurized way, you are far more likely to get to the truth. Before we wrap up, I would just like to ask you if you have ever experienced a British person say this expression to you before. I'll have a think about it. And if so, how did you actually deal with it? Did you interpret it as a no? Did you interpret it as they really were genuinely having to have a think about it? Please let me know in the comments below. I think in British English, I'll have a think about it. At its core, is really trying to be diplomatic. It's trying to avoid awkwardness. It's trying to be polite. It's trying to maintain social harmony, which is absolutely critical. But it is also important to try to get to the deeper meaning. And I hope that I've given you some food for thought when you hear this expression at some point in the future. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you so much for listening.